Welcome to The Window, talkSPORT's daily transfer show where we bring you the latest news, deals and rumours from the window. Joining me today is sports broadcaster and talkSPORT host Harry Symeou. Harry, how are you, my man?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Nah, I'm all good, man. Good to speak to you. There's only one place we can begin. It's with our club, Arsenal. It looks like we've on the verge of completing a deal for Brentford's captain, Christian Norgard, £10 million and £5 million in add-ons. You was on talkSPORT's Transfer Insiders last night, but just let everyone know your thoughts on this deal.
Yeah, I got to be honest, it's not a deal that had me jumping out of my seat in excitement. I think, Arsenal's preferred option was clearly to keep Thomas Partey because if it wasn't, they wouldn't have engaged in those contract talks with him and there wouldn't have been such a long discussion over his future. So the fact that he looks as though he's going to be moving on now and Arsenal have pivoted, I guess, is something maybe you can give them credit for because of how quickly they've reacted and responded and gone and got somebody else in through the door. I mean, that deal seemed to really accelerate yesterday, didn't it, in a really short period of time. So for that reason, maybe Arsenal deserve a bit of credit, but I think it's clear that their first choice was to keep Thomas Partey. And I think where a lot of people are maybe going wrong in their analysis of this is that they're making the comparison between Jorginho and Norgard when actually Jorginho was already gone. Jorginho was already out of the door quite some time ago. So the two options essentially were to have Zubimendi and Partey as your two number sixes, or to have Zubimendi and Norgard. And in the end, I think Arsenal have ended up with the slightly weaker option. It's not that I don't like Christian Norgard. It's not that I don't rate him as a player. I think he could become a really valued member of the squad. But my question will always be around Arsenal in this summer window. With every signing that we make, have we leveled up? Have we improved the team? Because that's ultimately what needs to happen for Arsenal to get over the line. And the answer here feels like a no. Now, I know there's other factors, wages, contract lengths, etc., etc. But even the wages, if you had given Thomas Partey, for instance, a 1 year plus one deal, that 1 year would have cost you around about £11 million, which is less than what Arsenal are paying for Christian Norgard. So I don't know that it's all about finance and it's all about money. Equally, I don't think Arsenal should have been held to ransom by Thomas Partey, but it's not a deal that I'm celebrating right now just because I don't think it improves us necessarily. Now, if Arsenal go out and they use the money that they haven't spent by bringing in Christian Norgard on this cut price deal and go and bolster the attack, I think I'll probably look at it quite differently. But at this moment in time, it's hard to be massively excited about this signing.
I mean, we spoke about it on your podcast, The Chronicles of Agume, that Arsenal were rumoured to be interested in Sevilla's Lucien Agume, who is at the France under-21 squad for the under-21 European Championship. Do you think this is a signing that shows Mikel Arteta is trying to go for a safer option rather than the younger, riskier player?
Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't have been overly excited by the signing of Lucien Agume either. And maybe I sound like I'm just being grumpy and that nobody's good enough. It's not that. It's, I think, when you develop as a team and improve the way we have, you get to a point in time where it's very, very hard to improve. And so the pool of players from which you can shop from in order to achieve that becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And unfortunately, in modern day football, you have to spend big money to get those players in. Now, I appreciate that, for example, Christian Norgard will be coming in and playing a backup role to Martin Zubimendi. But my follow-up to that and my response to that would be, why is everybody so sure that Martin Zubimendi is going to be an instant success? Good player, yes. Great track record, yes. Spanish international, yes. But we've seen so many top players struggle to adapt to the Premier League straight away. It's why people keep talking about Norgard being a great signing because of his Premier League experience. Well, if that counts for nothing, then why are we? If that counts for so much, why are we not talking about the lack of it with Martin Zubimendi? So I think he will be a good player for Arsenal, but just having Thomas Partey there to kind of hold his hand through that transition, I think would have been really important. Partey's made that transition from Spanish football to English football, plays that role in Mikel Arteta's team almost to perfection. And I think it would have just been a nice way of embedding the guy that we really are banking on to be the future for us in that position. And instead, we're bringing in someone who, with all due respect to Christian Norgard, doesn't have experience at the highest level. hasn't played in the Champions League. I don't know if he has in the past with a Danish club, but certainly hasn't recently. I think there's a lot to unpack here, and I think that whoever Arsenal brought in was likely to be a slight downgrade on Thomas Partey. I accept that and understand that, but that doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and celebrate this signing. If it turns out to be a good deal and it turns out to be a good move, I promise I'll be the first one to put my hands up and say I was wrong and Arteta and Arsenal were right. But at this moment, I'm finding it really hard to be excited by it.
No, I understand that. Well, let's hope for our sake that Norgard is a success. Interestingly, Thomas Partey posted on his Instagram story, he was pictured in the gym with William Saliba, Jurriën Timber and a few Arsenal coaches. Do you think there's any chance at all of Thomas Partey staying at Arsenal? And if not, have you heard of his new club? I know I've heard about Saudi Arabia being interested, talks of Marseille. Have you heard anything on Thomas Partey's future?
No, it's difficult to know where he's going to land. I don't think he's going to go to Saudi Arabia. I think that feels like a bit of a last resort for Thomas Partey. I was actually quite convinced that he wanted to stay at Arsenal, but I think we've got to a point where what Arsenal were willing to offer is just miles off of what Thomas Partey's camp and the player obviously were looking for. And so as a result of that, they're going to part ways. I think looking at his social media posts, I wouldn't read into them too much. It's clear that he's made a lot of friends at Arsenal over the years, and I don't begrudge players that keep those friendships and maintain those friendships. I think we see it a lot, don't we? People looking at social media and maybe trying to read into the posts quite deeply. I just think that they're mates, and that's that. In terms of where he's going to land, though, very, very, very difficult to say. If he's got wage demands like what we believe he was asking for in this new Arsenal contract, then it does really significantly limit his options. There's been talk about Italy. I think that's a league that would suit Thomas Partey down to a T. Could he return to La Liga? Possibly, but he's definitely not going to get the kind of pay packet that it sounds like he's after at this moment in time, unless he does make a move to Saudi Arabia. So he's probably looking for the longer contract. I think that's the key. If he gets the longer contract on less money, but that secures him for the next 3-4 seasons, I think he'd probably be open to that. But from what I understand, it's a very open situation. Nobody really knows quite yet where Thomas Partey is going to land.
I mean, Harry, sticking with social media activity, I know you put out a tweet on X, I think it was on Tuesday, about Victor Gyokeres following a dog security profile, which some people sort of got the joke, some didn't. Benjamin Sesko has been active online as well. Apparently, he just followed Arsenal's official Instagram account. How much do you read into that? And have you heard any updates on Arsenal striker pursuit?
I don't read into it too much. I think, people are just clutching at this time of the year, aren't they? They're desperate to find some kind of hint, some kind of, indication of where a player might end up. And I think this Sesko Gyokeres thing has been going on for such a long time now. It's almost taken the fun out of it. I don't know about you, but, I think whenever we get to the point whereby we're ready to announce one of those deals, if indeed Arsenal get there, I don't think I'm going to meet it with that same buzz, just because we've been hearing about it for such a long time and the excitement evaporates a little bit. But in terms of what do I know about the striker situation, what's the latest? It was interesting yesterday to hear Sami Mokbel speaking on the Latte Firm podcast, where he said that actually, if everything goes to plan, Benjamin Sesko is the one that Arsenal will end up with. Now, I find that interesting because so much of the reporting in the last 2-3 days has been centered around Victor Gyokeres. talkSPORT's very own Alex Crook said that Gyokeres has been telling everybody close to him that he thinks a deal to Arsenal is on the cards. Gianluca Di Marzio, who's very good on transfers, has also come out and said something very, very similar. But, Arsenal aren't going to sign both of these players. There's no way that happens. So for me, I'm still a little bit lost as to which one is the priority. How much of it is agent talk, I think, is another really important facet to this and an important angle to kind of make sure that you explore when discussing it, because, agents do things all the time. Fabrizio Romano, we know in the past, has been briefed by agents. And, if he puts something out, I know people have a lot of faith in what he does, myself included. but sometimes it will be steered and led by the noises coming out of a player's camp, which doesn't always necessarily align with the buying club's intentions. So it's very, very difficult to get a read on where this is going. My gut tells me that Sesko is the priority, and I've been saying that consistently. But my personal preference would probably be to see Victor Gyokeres come in.
Well, Harry, moving on from our club, Arsenal, another Premier League team that is looking to improve their forward line, Manchester United. It's been reported they're closing in on Bryan Mbuemo for a reported 60 to 70 million pound fee. Two questions here, really. Do you think that's a deal that Man United will get over the line, given Thomas Frank has moved to Spurs and they're reportedly interested in him as well? And how do you think Mbuemo improves Manchester United's attack?
I think he does improve it, but it just shows you how far Manchester United have fallen. And it's not to discredit Bryan Mbuemo, but Manchester United in the past would have been in the market for the best attackers in world football. And Bryan Mbuemo, as good as he is and as good a Premier League player as he is, he doesn't fall into that category for me. So, Manchester United have to take small steps. They've fallen a long way, and they're not just going to climb that ladder with the click of a finger. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to get them to this point. And this feels like the kind of signing that would be one that maybe serves them for the next 2-3 years while they're trying to get back to being a Champions League club, for instance, but probably needs to be looked at again when it comes to wanting to take that next step and challenging for titles and all the rest of it, which is what Manchester United as a football club should be doing. I think they will get this deal over the line. I think they're willing to pay the money, but I've been saying this throughout the window so far. I think whether you sign someone on the 26th, 27th of June, or you sign them on the 4th, 5th of July, it doesn't really make any difference. The pre-season hasn't started yet. And so why wouldn't you take that extra time to try and negotiate the best possible deal? I think there's a lot of panic around a number of deals, including this one, with regards to how long it's taking for progress to be made. Firstly, progress might be being made and we just don't know about it yet. But secondly, what difference does it make if you get the player in now or in a week's time? As long as they're there for pre-season, I think everybody's pretty relaxed, pretty calm, and still working to get the best possible value.
Harry, just lastly on Manchester United, they've obviously already got Matheus Cunha over the line. If they add Bryan Mbuemo, how many more signings do you think Manchester United need to kick on? Obviously, they finished 15th in the Premier League last season, lost the Europa League final. How much work is it going to take for them to get back to where they believe they belong?
I think you could argue that they need 11 signings to get back to where they think they should be and where Manchester United, based on their history, should be as a football club. But I think realistically, if they could get 5 or 6 in, and they don't all have to be bank-breaking signings, I think that would put them back on the right path. I think Ruben Amorim has got a very clear style of play. He's not going to veer away from that. We've seen that already just based on the way he talks and what his actions are in terms of team selections and setups. But you need a group of players that are equipped to play that way. And I don't think Manchester United have that at this moment in time. So, they need to improve. But I think the real standout area is the attack. They were toothless in front of goal last season. That was, for me, the biggest issue. They've already gone some way in addressing that by bringing in Matheus Cunha. And if they bring in Bryan Mbuemo as well, that's 2 really good attacking signings. And you never know, taking the responsibility away from the likes of Højlund and Xerxes, who are still relatively young players, that might allow them to just kind of improve quietly and get to grips with English football under the radar. And if they can do that, they might go on to contribute for Manchester United further down the line. But attack was the problem last season, as far as I could see it. And it feels like, at the very least, they're taking steps to address that already.
Now, moving on to the Premier League champions, Harry, they've just sold Jarell Konsa to Bayer Leverkusen for a fee reported to be £30 million. They do have a buyback clause of €60 million. It's reported that they're looking to get Mark Gahey, Crystal Palace captain, FA Cup winner, in as a replacement. What do you make of that signing, if it is true, Harry? And how much does that improve their squad and starting 11?
I think it improves their squad. I'm not sure it improves their starting 11 because I would still play Konate alongside Virgil van Dijk. I think that's a really good partnership. Has been a fair bit of speculation this summer about Ibrahima Konate and whether he's going to want to go elsewhere. There's PSG said to be interested. A number of other clubs, Real Madrid, have been talked about as well. But in terms of Mark Gahey coming in, I'm not sure that is really a signing for the starting 11. I think that would be about adding depth. And if you then make the comparison between Mark Gay and Jarell Quansah. If the Quansah deal can fund most of the Gay signing, I think Liverpool come out of that really, really well.
Mm.
Because in my opinion, Mark Gay is a more established and maybe slightly better Premier League centre back. So Liverpool would be coming out really, really well, and that would be a really smart, savvy bit of business if they could get that over the line. They've done already incredible business this summer, and as a fan of a rival club, of a club that expects to compete with them, you look at it and you're thinking, wow, they're making serious moves. I know they didn't do much last summer, and I know some of the signings they've made, particularly those coming in from Bayer Leverkusen, they'd have had a lot of time to get those sort of sorted and arranged, because we've known for ages that Xabi Alonso was going to be leaving the club. The players there would have known that for a while and would have been putting, their sort of their steps in place to get those moves that they want. Liverpool are in really, really great shape, and if they can add Mark Gay to that defensive unit as well, it can only be a good thing.
Chelsea are reportedly closing in on Dortmund winger Jamie Bynoe Gittens. Obviously, both clubs are at the Club World Cup, so they say that the boards of both clubs have been speaking whilst they're out in the States. There's obviously also been rumours that Arsenal are interested in Noni Madueke, Harry. So it's a sort of from both clubs' perspectives. Who's getting the better player? Chelsea improving by signing Jamie Bynoe Gittens and letting go of Noni Madueke?
Um, I'm not sure that either of them are top tier wingers. I think that Bino Gittins has got maybe the potential, and I think that's probably what is attracting Chelsea to him. But Chelsea have bought lots of players of this kind of mold, younger players that are seemingly on an upward trajectory. The problem is that they've got such a big squad that when you bring these players in and they don't get to play week in, week out, they don't get to develop, there's no continuity. Often you can stunt that development. And I think that's my worry about Bino Gittins going to Chelsea. If I were him, I'd probably want to stay one more year in the Bundesliga and just continue to improve and really establish myself before making a move like that. But look, Chelsea have got a big pool. They're a London-based club. They're a big club in terms of what they've achieved in recent history, and you can understand why people are attracted to them. I'm just not sure it's the right move for Bino Gittins at this stage, and it's no disrespect to Chelsea. I'm just looking at it through a purely player perspective and what his priorities should be in the next 12, 18 months. On the Noni Madueke stuff, this is a prime example of what I was talking about. A player that came in with huge promise, a player that everybody expected to really kick on to that next level, and who quite frankly hasn't. Not saying he's been a bad player for Chelsea. He's been effective at certain points, at certain times, in certain games, but is he consistent enough? The answer for me is no. And while Arsenal could probably do with a right winger, someone that could come in and provide that bit of support for Bukayo Saka, I'm not sure that Chelsea demanding £50 million, which is what the reports are telling us, is reasonable for Noni Madueke. And so in that case, if I were Arsenal, I would walk away from that. I wouldn't be entertaining it at that price. The price would have to come down to 20, 25 million for me at the absolute maximum before I'd even consider that as Arsenal Football Club.
Well, let's see what happens with Chelsea's winger merry-go-round. Sticking in London, our rivals Spurs, Tottenham, they're looking to sign Crystal Palace's Eberechi Eze, who of course had a stellar season, basically leading Palace to that FA Cup win. Do you think that's the right move for Eberechi Eze at this point in his career, and how much does that improve Tottenham's side?
Oh, I think it improves Tottenham a lot. I think he's a top player, Eberechi Eze, and I think at a club like Tottenham, he sort of strikes that balance between still kind of getting to be one of the bigger fish rather than going to like a Liverpool or an Arsenal or a Manchester City where he would be, with all due respect, he would be kind of part of the supporting cast. I think going to Tottenham would represent a really, really good move for him. I would have said under Ange Postecoglou that would have been a perfect signing, because Ange Postecoglou would have definitely given him that freedom and that kind of license to go and express himself and play his game. Obviously, Tottenham were not performing well enough in the Premier League, and I'm sure Eberechi Eze doesn't want to join a club that finished below Crystal Palace. So, maybe that would never have happened in that case and in that instance. But I guess my question is, where does he fit into Thomas Frank's mold? And we can only go by what Thomas Frank's done previously at Brentford, and we can only judge his playing style on that, really. I expect it to be a bit more expansive, a bit more open, and I expect him to give a bit more creative license to some of his players at Tottenham, given he'll have a higher caliber of player, generally speaking. But yeah, I think Eberechi Eze to Tottenham would make sense for everybody involved. And if they can get hold of him, I think that'd be a really, really good signing.
And lastly, Harry, just to finish, I'm sure you've seen Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, Portuguese and just football legend, has extended his contract at Al Nassr. He's 40 years of age. Of course, he's earning astronomical money in Saudi Arabia. How long do you think Cristiano Ronaldo will continue to play? And what do you make of him signing this new deal with Al Nassr?
Well, first of all, it's going to be a very lucrative deal. We know that. And so, who are we to judge someone sort of signing that deal? I think we all would if it was put in front of us. So, I think, for Cristiano Ronaldo, it gives him obviously that little bit more incentive to continue. Obviously, the financial incentives there. But I also think he's a crazy driven guy that just wants to keep on playing. And although people sort of question this decision to go out to the Saudi Pro League, and we'll talk about the standard of the football out there, I actually think that for Cristiano Ronaldo, this is a league in which he can continue in still for another 2, 3 years. I wouldn't be surprised if he kept playing until 42, 43, genuinely, because the pace is slower. He's not being put through the same paces that he would if he was playing in one of Europe's top leagues. I don't think he's being found out in terms of not being the peak version of Cristiano Ronaldo anymore. So I think for him, it's the perfect place to be. The money's great, the weather's great, and he's in a league where he is the man and will continue to be the man, I believe, for probably another 2, 3 seasons. So it makes sense.